At this time, I will call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals regular meeting to order for February 24th, 2021, our regular meeting. At this time, would you please join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, may we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Here.
Vice Chairman Shahab?
Here.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Here.
Member Wheelis?
Here.
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Very good. We have a full quorum tonight. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for December 3rd, 2020. And has any of our members seen any corrections or additions that need to be made to the minutes from that meeting? Okay. Well, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February,
No, December.
December 23rd.
Second.
All right, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes completely. All right. Now I get to hear myself talk. All right, as far as tonight's procedures go, all persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on a table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with procedures adopted in Resolution 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may take a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. Staff, have the items to come for us tonight been properly advertised?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any members that have had personal phone calls or written by and viewed the areas before tonight's meeting agenda?
No.
All right, I see there are none on. Thank you, Laura Lee. I'm calling you out. I know who you are. Yes, if you do have a cell phone, please check it to make sure it's on vibrate or turned off for the rest of the meeting. We would appreciate it very much. All right, we did have one item of old business, and I'll let staff tell us about that.
There was one item that was mentioned in your minutes, number 17, the variance application number 17-2020. That was tabled at your last meeting on December 3rd, and the applicant withdrew that application because we were able to resolve their issue, and that was the variance application for 1885 Armstrong. The next agenda item is an old business that was tabled by you on December 3rd, and that is variance number 19-2020 for Parish Park, and Navia Fontes will give a presentation, or actually, excuse me, that one was withdrawn by the applicant just this afternoon, excuse me, and I sent you an email that was, or forwarded over to an email to you from the applicant in regards to that. The City Council last night approved an ordinance adopting a new public variance process, and so the applicant indicated in the email that they will most likely petition, go through that process for their variances, and that would require their variances to be heard by City Council instead. So with that withdrawn, any discussion about this? The applicant's basically asking you for no action on this item.
Thank you. So then we will move on So if there is anyone here that was planning to speak to variance number 19-2020, that will not be heard this evening. All right, so we will move now to new business. Yes?
First of all, Mom says there's no sound on the TV.
Okay, no sound on the TV. Back room?
I'm sorry.
If you're going to speak, you need to come to the microphone, please, ma'am. We are hopefully broadcasting.
Can you speak under petitions and requests?
Oh, wait a minute. Is there a button to hit to turn that on? You see it?
Should know that.
There we go. Thank
All
you.
right. Are we allowed to comment on that agenda item under petitions and requests?
If you wish, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now you turned it off. I don't know if we'll ever get it on again. Just leave it on, yes. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to new business now. Variance number 7-2020, and this concerns 1299 Elizabeth Avenue. So before we get started, staff, what page do we flip to?
That can be found on page 140 of the agenda.
140.
140.
Okay, I'm trying to get the 140 in there. 140. No, that's not working. How do I get that in there to go direct? Oh, I can go right here? Okay. Bingo. Thank you. All right, staff, would you enlighten us on that, please?
Sure. Like I said, that item begins on page 140. The applicant, Kim Fisher, is requesting variances to the city's land development regulations. The requested variances are as follows. Number 1, section 28-307C, required setbacks. The applicant requested a variance to allow 20-foot front yard setbacks for a townhome development in lieu of the required 25 feet. That that request is proposed for each lot within the development. Number 2, section 30-322, to minimize size of plantings and grading of plant and landscape yard buffers. The applicant requested a variance to allow 1 tree per townhome lot in the north and west landscape yard buffers, and to reduce the number of plantings in east and south landscape yards in lieu of the required minimum number of plantings. Number 3, section 30-332A, required landscape yard buffers. The applicant requested a variance to allow a 10-foot wide. Number 4, section 30-332A, required landscape yard buffers. The applicant requested a variance to eliminate the north and west boundary landscape yard buffers. Number 5, section 30-335A, description of landscape yards. The applicant requested a variance to allow less than the required number of plantings in the landscape yards. And number 6, section 30-339A, visual buffer and screening requirements. The applicant requested a variance to the screening requirement in the east landscape yard buffer. The future land use is high-density residential. The zoning is multifamily high-density residential, R3, and the surrounding zoning districts are to the north, southeast, multifamily high-density residential, R3, and to the west, single-family medium-density residential, R1B. The lot characteristics: the property is approximately 2.93 acres with 410 linear feet of frontage on Elizabeth Avenue and 307 linear feet of frontage on Whispering Hills Drive. The use: the property is vacant. A townhome development is permitted in the R3 zoning district. Section 34-226 is the criteria used to review a variance, and I'll briefly go over them. In order to authorize any variance to the provisions of such ordinance, the board must consider the following criteria. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, and which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or building in the same zoning. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance requested will not confer upon the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the ordinance. The variance is granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, building, or structure. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance and remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. In granting the variance, public safety and welfare must be assured, and in no case shall the granting of variance result in a change of use, which would not be permitted in that zone. I'll move ahead to the analysis of the report. The applicant is proposing a 28-unit, two-story townhome development at the southeast corner of Elizabeth Avenue and Whispering Hills Drive. The development includes 6 buildings with between 4 and 6 residential units each. The front doors of each residential unit will face a public right-of-way with the exceptions of lots 21 through 28. The applicant is proposing to dedicate a 10-foot wide access easement to 2 adjacent land-locked lots located at 1155 and 1165 Mockingbird Lane. The city's zoning development standards limit the density potential on the site. The property is located in an area that was platted in 1946 prior to the city's first zoning code in 1964. The land development regulations require 25-foot front and rear setbacks, 20 feet of separation between buildings, 20-foot perimeter landscape yard buffers, stormwater, and parking facilities. Drainage and easements are not permitted in landscape yard buffers, and all buffers must be in a separate tract. In addition, numerous overstory and understory trees and shrubs are required in the landscape yard. The applicant is proposing to reduce the required number of trees and other vegetation along the perimeter of the property, which will not be offset elsewhere on the site. The applicant is requesting relief from the code to allow the front yards to be 20 feet in lieu of the 25 feet. The property could be considered an infill lot per comprehensive plan future land use element policies 1.7.7 and 1.7.8. The property is vacant, skipped over land in a built-up area that has been platted or previously developed more than 20 years ago. The property is located within the city's community development block grant target area, and infrastructure services and public facilities are readily accessible to serve the site without significant public investments. The following variances are required to approve the development as proposed. Number 1, to allow 20-foot front yard setbacks for a townhome development in lieu of the required 25 feet. The rear garages and driveways will be accessible via an internal street rather than facing Elizabeth Avenue and Whispering Hills Drive. Number 2, allow 1 tree per townhome lot in the north and west landscape buffers, and reduce the number of plantings in the east and south landscape yards in lieu of the required minimum number of plantings. The applicant states that this will provide more visibility for security purposes in the front yards. The applicant verbally stated that the reduction of vegetation in the east and south landscape yards are due to site constraints from the pond and the access easement that is proposed to be located at the south of the property. Number 3, to allow a 10-foot wide landscape yard along the east property boundary. The building on lot 20 in the pond appear to be located in a 20-foot buffer, which is prohibited by the code. Approval of this variance could eliminate this issue, and the applicant could install an opaque fence along the east property line. Number 4, allow the north and west boundary landscape yards to be located in the front yards of townhome lots in lieu of a separate tract. A 20-foot landscape yard requirement at the public rights-of-way in a separate tract could reduce the number of townhome residential units and prohibit the orientation of the units to front the public rights-of-way. And number 5, allow less than the required number of trees in the landscape yards. The applicant stated that this will provide more visibility for security purposes in the front yards. The applicant verbally stated that the reduction in vegetation in the east and south landscape yards are due to site constraints from the pond and the access easement that is proposed to be located at the south of the property. I will move ahead to the recommendation. Staff recommends the board weigh the merits of each variance as they apply to the hardship criteria listed in section 34-226. The variance could be supported due to the site constraints. A 28-lot townhome development is half the maximum density potential and is on a parcel that is less than 3 acres. The code requires 20-foot perimeter landscape yard buffers, which significantly reduce the development area. The development is further restricted by the prohibition of drainage infrastructure and easements in the landscape yard. The variances may be considered the minimum necessary to make beneficial use of the property in order to provide sufficient stormwater and parking facilities to serve the site. The plan submittal attempts to preserve the spirit of the code and remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. However, the applicant is proposing to reduce the required number of trees and other vegetation along the perimeter of the property, which will not be offset elsewhere on the site. Appropriate vegetation along the public rights-of-way and opaque fence along the east and south property lines could meet the spirit and intent of the code. Finally, the property is located in the city's target area and appears to meet the infill criteria specified in Comprehensive Plan Land Use 1.7.7 and 1.7.8. Staff recommends the approval of the following conditions. Number one, for purposes of identifying setbacks, the plat shall identify the location of front and rear yards for each townhome lot. Number two, a common area easement located in the front yards of each townhome lot should be dedicated to the homeowners association for the purposes of maintaining the landscaping in the required 20-foot landscape yards. The remaining landscape yards located at the east and south property boundaries will be in common tracts. Number three, add visual screening such as 6-foot-high fence along the east property boundary where the landscape yard is proposed to be reduced from 20 feet to 10 feet. And number four, to add a visual screen such as a 6-foot-high fence in the south landscape yard to screen the proposed driveway to 1155 and 1165 Mockingbird Lane.
Thank you, staff. And as I understand it, we'll be needing to vote on each one of these variances separately. But I propose that we talk about it and speak to them in general as the whole package, if that is okay with the rest of the council. or
Mr.
commission.
Chairman, we do
Yes.
have a little bit extra we wanted
Yeah.
to point you to in the agenda.
Okay, you have some other, all right, thank you.
So if I could direct you to page 152 of the agenda. Give you all a second to. So if I could direct you to the plan, the east boundary line that describes that has the description of the landscape yards to the east of the property line, which is the variance that will be requested, or that is being requested, I'm sorry.
On this page, you'll see the requested vegetation that they're asking. So it states in here around this drawing on one page 52, the proposed vegetation versus what they're required. So one of the variances is to reduce the amount of vegetation that's required in those landscape buffers. So if this variance is approved, they won't have to offset that vegetation somewhere else on site. So this is what they're proposing along in those buffers.
So when you say the east side, as we look to this, that is all the way to the right, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And adjacent to what is considered number 20? And the other units around the pond? Or, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my head around which is.
So that's correct. That is the lots 21 through 28.
Yeah, 21 to 20, okay, all right. That's what pertains to that variance, which was number, which was number 1, 2,
Number 5.
Number 5, okay, number 5,
No?
all right.
I'm sorry, that'll be on page 145.
All right. So you're correct. The page on 152 correlates to variance number 5, reduction of vegetation. But what I want to point out was page 145 of your packet. You'll see the illustration that was provided by the applicant for the remaining variances related to the buffers and the widths of those buffers.
Sorry, these are big pages and my clicker's not. Clicking slowly. Okay. Okay, there it is. All right. I found it. Thank you. Is there anything else you wish to share?
So on page 145, that also illustrates the requested variances for the front buffer. If you see along lots 9 through 20, the variance request for the the front buffer within the front lots. That'll be lots 9 through 20.
Uh-huh, okay. That's along Whispering Hills then? right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything, nothing else to share then? All right. Okay.
That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll bring it back to the commissions if they wish to have questions of staff on these different items.
I have a general question for you. Just,
Very good.
is this zoning, is an old zoning, or is it recent?
Are you talking about in terms of the,
R3 zoning on this property?
with the 5-acre minimum zone, or is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm saying, is this a recent zoning, or is it an old zoning? Is it an old zoning? And did the setbacks change from, in that old zoning, did the setback change recently?
The property has always been zoned R3.
R3.
At least as far as we can see since 1993 and possibly even before that.
Yeah.
But as far as the setback requirements in that zoning district, we didn't notice any changes since 1993. So it's always been 25 feet, as far as we know.
It's always that.
As far as we know. Now, we didn't go into the history, but as far as I recall from other projects, that setback has always been there for this particular zoning district.
Question for staff. The landscape requirements are what has changed over the years, is that correct? Related to R3 zoning? And
yeah,
also the landscape buffers and the drainage easements that are required on that R3, on those lots.
Oh, yeah, the landscaping section of the city's code has been modified many times over the years.
That's the thought there.
Was there a landscape plan submitted?
No, the project is currently going through a sketch plat process, so a landscape plan was not specifically required at this stage. It will be required at the site plan stage. So what you see on page 152 is what it will be proposed as part of, in order to meet the landscape buffer requirements. The remaining vegetation or landscaping requirements, as far as landscape islands and internal landscaping, will be dealt with during the site plan stage. So no, at this point, we do not have a full landscape plan.
Because this variance is for landscape variance too, right?
These variances are primarily related to the buffers.
To the buffer, not the
Correct.
landscape. But they talk about one tree instead of more than one tree, and
Right.
that's mainly landscape.
So the buffers themselves have a minimum vegetation requirements inside the buffers. So a buffer, for example, is supposed to be 20 feet wide, and then it tells you in another section of the code that you're supposed to put an overstory tree every 50 linear feet inside that buffer. So that's part of the definition of a buffer. So the applicant's requesting variances to the width of the buffer and the plantings themselves that are allowed or required in that particular buffer.
So didn't I see that this is also officially zoned for a lot more units than what's actually being planned for the property?
The R3 zoning district has a maximum density of 15 units per acre. So I think we estimated 48 or 46 units.
Uh-huh,
So 28 units is half that.
okay.
So the land use category in the zoning has a maximum density, but then when you get in, throw in the rest of the regulations, such as stormwater requirements, buffers, and everything else, it starts to reduce the number of units potentially on that property.
Okay. Well, they just have unit numbers. Is there any, I didn't, unless I missed it, any description of what size units these would be that they're going to put on here? Or what page did I miss that on?
If you go to the bottom right-hand side of 152,
Okay,
you'll see the lot dimensions for these townhomes. And they are the two different ones. The lot dimensions will be 22 feet wide and 110 feet deep, and the second one will be 20 feet wide and 110 feet deep. And that meets the R3 zoning district.
oh, okay, yeah, there they are. Oh, and there's the, down below is the square footage size of the, no? Or is that times all of them? I mean, the actual units themselves. Do you have any idea what, is that on there? Am I missing
Well,
that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is that what this number is down here? That's it.
Total number of
Further down.
units.
28.
Ah, didn't go down far enough. Ah, there they are. Okay, I'm technically challenged, I'll admit it. But now let's blow it up so I can read the number. All right, okay. 1,200 square feet, okay. That answers my question, thank you very much. Is there other questions of staff? Seeing none, we will open it up now for a public hearing. Do we have any cards for speaking?
No, sir.
No cards? Okay. So then, is that just?
Kim Fisher.
Okay. Okay, you're the applicant. Very good.
Sorry, didn't know I needed to fill out a card as the applicant, but for the record, Kim Fisher, 1614 White Dove Drive, Winter Springs, 32708. I am representing the owner on this project. So first and foremost, good evening, and we've been working with staff for quite some time, so I do want to thank staff for their hard work and effort, and we agree with staff's report with one condition on that. Is that these are going to be fee simple townhomes, so they're going to be sold. When we were looking at Titusville, and I'll go through our brochure in a minute, there's just a lot of rental units, which I have some pictures. So since these are fee simple, we don't want to have an easement in the front yard, which the front yard will be facing Whispering Hills and Elizabeth. So I think any of you that own homes, it's kind of a little odd to have an easement so that other people can come onto your front yard without permission. So we don't actually agree with that one, but everything else with staff, we are in agreement, and we do thank staff. The little handout I have, the first sheet is a little layout, and you can see the trees and the variances that we are proposing. So like I said, these are going to be townhomes with garages. So the next two pictures are a couple pictures of perhaps the front and perhaps the back. When we evaluated this area, the areas that I've got the circle on pages 3 and 4, I see these littered all over the city, these little 4-unit apartment, I guess I shouldn't call them apartment, but we'll say a rental building. That's actually what we're zoned for, and we did initially consider that. But when we drove around the neighborhood and saw what was around, we just thought home ownership would be better in this side of the city. It's going to enhance the area. And so we really wanted to go with more of a home ownership instead of a rental community. And as such, that does reduce the number of units that we're doing in this area. And so part of that is having a buffer along with Spring Hills, which is a residential road, and Elizabeth Avenue, which is also a residential road. So if they were single-family houses, that we're not zoned for, then we would have driveways directly on these residential roads. But we wanted this to be integrated as part of the community. To put in a landscape buffer kind of visually separates you, and that's not what we're wanting. If we were doing rental style, that is what we would do, is we would have that buffer, but because we're having fee simple ownership, we want you to have a door that goes directly, that faces Elizabeth and that faces West Green Hills. So that is the reason that our front yard, we're asking for the buffer be within that front yard, and we're asking to do one tree per townhome instead of a row of tree and a row of hedges that you can no longer see the door, which does present security issues that, you know, if you're walking down the sidewalk, you can't see the door to your unit. And that's along the south, the left, which is your west, and to the top, which is the north. Along the east, we're just asking to reduce that down to 10 feet wide. And once you reduce the width of the buffer, I sound like I'm really loud, so I'm sorry if I am. Once you reduce the width of the buffer, you have to reduce the number of trees, or else you have tree on top of tree on top of tree, and then the trees can't survive. When you've got a 20-foot buffer, 20-foot wide buffer, then you can offset those trees. So because we're asking for a 10-foot reduction in the buffer, did I lose sound? Because we're asking for a 10-foot buffer, we are then asking for the consequential reduction in trees in there. And same with along the south, there is a driveway that's going through there. So we're going to keep that driveway for the neighbors who are accessing it to the east. We're going to relocate it a little bit to put it on the edge of our property. So that would be inside of that buffer. And we're okay, like staff said, we're okay with putting a fence there to give some visual buffer to the east and to the south. As far as the 20-foot instead of the 25-foot, that just kind of goes the same way. The closer with having West Green Hills and Elizabeth as frontage for these units so that you can walk to your door from the sidewalks that are existing in place, and having it 20 foot and having a bit of a buffer, not buffer, but setback where the garages are. The garages will face the alleyway. So as residents come in here, they'll come onto the private street / alley, and their garages will be at that point. And so then along Whispering and along Elizabeth will be a door. And it's almost a little similar. I put inspirational village. Brad corrects me every time because I say it wrong 100% of the time. Kind of similar to what they have. They've got garages on their main street. And then they've got a little white fence along Queen Street there, and they don't have a ton of vegetation on that, but that would be similar to what we're looking for. And hopefully the first page shows you, since there's the tree symbols on there, shows you a little bit what we're looking for. So we're just hoping this will enhance the area, especially this side of Titusville, and get away from the standard rental units, which is what we're trying to get away from.
I do have a question on the lots 21 through 28. So the front door, quote unquote, front door will be facing the pond. Is that
Correct.
correct? Will there be a sidewalk up and down there for access?
Most likely, we're going to put a sidewalk or some kind of a walking thing along that pond to where those parking spaces are. That's what we're envisioning also. There will also be a door next to the garages.
Yes.
So next to the garage will be a door, and then they'll have another door on that. So they'll have a door from both the front and the back.
Oh, okay. So each unit has doors front and rear.
Yes, sir.
But, for those, the front door is officially facing the pond, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? I see it as a very nice, I'm glad you got this.
Thank you. Sorry it was at the last minute so that Brad couldn't include it in your packet.
Yeah, they look very nice. Other questions? I'm seeing none, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have any other cards?
No, sir.
All right, no other cards. So we will close the public hearing at this time and bring it back to the commission for either further questions of staff or discussion. I find this, in this area, a very nice complex, and I do agree that the quad complex rentals are plentiful in town. Any other questions?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
In reviewing the requirements versus the proposed on each of these variants, are we assured that these are the least amount of variance that's actually required for each one of these? Have you looked at these closely for that purpose?
When you say proposed versus what required versus what's proposed, are you talking about the vegetation specifically?
In looking at the, yes, in looking at the vegetation specifically.
So on page 152 of your packet, back to that plan, we went through and did an exhaustive review of this several months ago to find out exactly how many trees and other vegetation is required within each buffer. Proposed that we informed the applicant of that, and their response was to ask for variance to reduce that based on the proposal, with this proposal that you have here on page 152. So for example, on the east buffer, we estimated it would require 9 canopy trees, and the applicant is proposing 6. And so on for the rest of the buffers.
Can staff also further discuss or explain one of the proposed conditions, number 2, the common area easement in the front yard?
Back to page 144 of your packet are the list of proposed conditions. If you are inclined to approve this, this is what we would recommend. And the condition that Ms. Fisher was mentioning relates to the front yards. So along Elizabeth and along Whispering Hills, there'd be a 20-foot landscape buffer required. She's asking for that to not be put in a tract, basically, or not at all. And in lieu of that, she'll put in 1 tree per lot. What we would ask for is to help maintain or ensure that those trees will be maintained, is that there'd be association would have to maintain those through an easement or some kind of documentation and to ensure that. And the reason we believe strongly about that is because there's a state law now that pretty much allows a residential property owner to go ahead and remove a tree without a permit, as long as they get some kind of sign off or a review or a letter from a certified arborist. So it does not require any kind of city permit or review to remove that tree. They just have to get that letter, basically. So that was one of the reasons why we suggested that, and we would really like to make sure that there's those trees are maintained along those streets. I can certainly understand Ms. Fisher's concern about that. It could be something that may not necessarily have to be in an easement. It could be something that's mentioned or stated inside the declaration of the association. I don't know if Ms. Fisher wants to respond to that. Okay.
And thank you. Again, for the record, Kim Fisher, applicant. Yeah, we're okay with putting that in the HOA docs. That's actually not that uncommon that, well, I usually find that cities are a little more proactive and really fine you by taking down a tree, even a residential property. But if that's the case, then you can stick it into the HOA docs, so where the HOA has the ability to require it and make you replant or make you pay. We would be okay with putting that into an HOA doc so that we maintain that we've got a minimum of 1 tree per lot. Thank you.
Question, please.
Sure. You can make it 2.
No, just one. In the front, you have 10 feet, right, to the building line?
20 feet.
It's 20 feet
Yes.
setback.
Yes.
But the landscape buffer is only 10, right?
Well, the landscape buffer would be part of the front yard, so we're asking for no
I
landscape
see.
buffer to make that in lieu of, it's just your front yard with a minimum of 1 tree.
So the building itself is 20 feet from the
Correct.
front? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Got a
That's it.
second?
One question. That's it.
You got off easy there. All right, are there any other questions, staff? All right, so, so we have multiples here. What page do I back up with all those on? Okay,
The report starts on page
140.
140, yeah.
Found it. Click. There it is. Get it or read it. Click. I'm sorry. Bear with me, please. Okay, so the first section that we'll be voting on then would be 28-307C. Is that correct? That would be the required setbacks.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, do I have any discussion on this particular item? On C? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve variance number 7-2020. And first part of the variance, which is section 28-307C. That's for the, to allow 20-foot front yard setback for a townhome development in lieu of the 25 feet.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All right, may we have roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahaya?
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Okay, one down. All right, now we'll go to section 30-322, the minimum size of plantings / gradings of plants in the landscape buffer. This is the one the applicant requested 1 tree per townhouse lot. So, okay, that's the request for 1 tree. Do I have any discussion on that?
I just have a question I think I need for just clarification. The conditions that are set out, 1 through 4, if those are going to be adopted in some sort of capacity for these variances, is that coordinating with the 1 through 5 listed above for the specific variances? Or do we need to piece them apart for each one?
I think if you do agree with those 4 conditions, I think with each variance application, you could make a motion to just say that you approve, if you decide to approve the variance with those conditions, and then without having to pick it apart. And then the ones that are applicable will just be applied to that particular variance. So each variance that you consider, you could just say the same thing in your motion.
Okay. Okay.
First variance that was just approved, that sounds like it was approved without any of those conditions at this point.
Right.
And we had one particular condition in here that we would just like to make sure that the applicant identifies what's a front and what's a rear setback.
Right.
So, on the plat.
So, Chairman, can we open up, I guess, discussion in general for a second regarding the conditions?
Okay.
So conditions 1 through 4, I simply take exception with the second one and the discussion that was between staff and Ms. Fisher now regarding, instead of having an actual easement, but requiring it in either a homeowner, or I think it also should specify, or a community association or a homeowners association declaration of maintaining the tree, instead of specifically requiring a common easement, which could be open to much interpretation.
All right, is that on number 2?
Page 144.
Yeah.
Yes to number 2.
number 2. So we're just adding the language of HOA or community. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes, that the community association or homeowners association would be required to maintain that.
If I may ask, so what you're saying, is you're replacing that language where it says easement, and you're replacing it with, the tree would be, that language would be incorporated in an HOA document.
Correct.
Okay.
But I also say community association because if they don't turn it over to the homeowners right away, then the community association needs to maintain it.
Just, you could just state that it'd be something that has to be inserted in a declaration for the
Yes.
property.
That would be my suggestion, and then I am comfortable agreeing blanket covering the acceptance of these conditions if we approve the variances.
Okay. All right. And the applicant has no problem with that?
You're saying no easement though, right?
No.
Correct.
We're just saying this has to be in your documents.
That we must maintain a minimum of 1 tree.
That's, yes.
But in order to maintain that, you still have to show it somewhere where it could be included in the homeowner's documents, you see.
Those are reviewed by us during the site plan review, for the final plat.
This should apply to, too, for number 1, basically, number 1
Yes,
condition.
at this point,
would
what
be the
I'd
same.
recommend is that the board make a motion to adopt the conditions as amended in the recent discussion to apply to the entire variance that's going to have a development order for this property.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will make a motion to approve the conditions, which we have amended pursuant to discussion, specifically number 2, removing not only the word easement, but replacing that condition by requiring language in the declaration of either the homeowners association or community association
Or in their
to maintain the
documents.
tree.
All right.
That's my motion.
Okay. Does that sound correct, staff, as far as, okay, that sounds
We
good.
follow that.
That would be part of the final plat as accepted.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Thank you.
All right. Roll call, please.
Member Smith Rodriguez,
Yes.
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shaheed.
Yes.
Wonderful. So now we're on section 30, 33-2A. This is about the 10-foot wide landscape buffer on the east property.
I do not believe you made any, correct me if I'm wrong, Chelsea, did they make a final motion on number 2 variance? That's 30-322. Oh, I'm sorry, that, I just heard 10 feet, so that sounds like variance number 3.
Or number 2? Oh, I thought we'd moved to number 3. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion or any comment on that item? Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve variance number 7-2020, item number 2, with the amended conditions.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shaheed,
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay. I'm on number 3, right? All right, we're going to section 30-332A, the landscape buffer. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, is there a motion, please?
Should I? Go ahead.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve variance 7-2020, item number 3 to section 30-332, subsection A, with the conditions as amended.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? May we have roll call, please?
Vice Chairman Shahay?
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes. Good. All right, next is section 30. Well, the same number, so the required setback, required landscape yard buffers. 30-332A again.
I'll make a motion to approve variance 7-2020, item number 4 to section 30-332 subsection A regarding the landscape yards in the front yard, with the conditions as amended.
All right. We have a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I second it.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahay?
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
All right, going down to number 5. Section 30-33, or 335, subsection A, description of landscape yards. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve variance number 7-2020, item number 5, for less than the required number of plantings.
Before there's a second, does that motion specifically reference the illustration that was submitted in your packet on page 152? So in other words, are you accepting in your motion what the applicant has proposed as the number of vegetation in those buffers?
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahay?
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
And now we get to number 6, section 30-339A, visual buffer and screening requirements. Is there any discussion or a motion, please? And again, staff, that would come up under your site review and all, correct, about the screening?
Yes, if this variance is approved, then that would have to be incorporated as part of the site plan.
Thank
It
you.
had to be illustrated on the site plan.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve variance 7-2020, item number 6 to section 30-339 subsection A, requiring the fence. I guess I should ask staff, it said fence, I was accepting the fence to the south and the east, was it? Specifically?
Good.
Hold on, stand by on my motion.
The variance is to the east, yeah.
It's number 4 of the conditions.
Okay, yes, to the east.
Okay. Okay, so
Oh, with
your
any conditions, yes, with amended conditions, sorry.
With, okay, with the conditions, all right.
I was reading it.
With the
and I wasn't
amended
thinking.
condition, yes, all right. Have a motion, do I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahay?
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Very good. So we've gotten through that one, so you're good there. Thank you very much. All right, we will go now to, let's blow this up a little bit. Variance number 1-2021, dealing with 105. Is it Pinedo or Pino? I can't remember.
Pinedo.
Okay, Pino. All right. Inform us, please. Enlighten us, staff.
So this item begins on page 205 of the agenda. The applicant, Epic Consultant and LV Rice, is requesting a variance to Land Development Regulations, Section 30-332, required landscape yards, to allow less than the minimum 20-foot width landscape yard buffer requirement to allow for a building encroachment on property located in the Community Commercial Zoning District located at 105 Pine Needle Drive. The future land use is commercial low intensity. The zoning is community commercial, and the property was rezoned from R1B to community commercial through Ordinance 4-2015. The surrounding zoning districts are to the north, multifamily high density, R3, to the south, community commercial, CC, to the east, shoreline mixed use, SMU, and to the west, single family medium density, R1B. The lot characteristics, the property meets the minimum width and size requirements in the community commercial zoning district. The lot is rectangular in shape with 185 linear feet of frontage on Pine Needle Drive and 120 feet on South Washington Avenue. The use, the property is currently vacant with several large trees, and the proposed office is permitted use in the community commercial zoning district. I already went through the requirements are for review for variances, so I'll skip ahead to the analysis. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the width of a required landscape yard buffer adjacent to Pine Needle Drive from 20 feet to 15 feet for purposes of preserving an existing 14-inch DBH size oak tree. The 14-inch oak is located between the proposed office building and the ancillary parking lot. The applicant submitted a site plan application for purposes of constructing a 3,965 square foot office building with accessory parking lot and stormwater system. The land development regulations require a 20-foot landscape yard buffer adjacent to Pine Needle Drive and a 30-foot landscape yard buffer adjacent to US 1. The intent of the protection and removal measures are described in section 30-331, and I'll read it. This article is intended to improve and protect the environment, character, and value of surrounding properties. The provision of landscaping and the retention of natural plant growth reduces erosion, provides natural water retention and filtration, provides shade, buffers incompatible uses, aids in urban temperature control, and improves the aesthetic quality of the community, thereby promoting the public health, safety, and general welfare. The applicant is proposing to maintain a certain amount of the existing canopy by preserving existing trees, including the 14-inch DBH oak. Section 30-334 states any landscape areas reduced in size shall be offset by an equal amount in another area of the site. The applicant is not proposing to offset the landscape area. The applicant stated that the property is a corner lot that has road frontage on US 1 and Pine Needle Drive, and because it is a corner lot, the landscape buffers are larger for both road frontages than a lot with only one road frontage. After applying all of the perimeter landscape yard buffer requirements, approximately 13,500 plus square feet is available for the applicant to design the site with the office building, ancillary parking lot, stormwater facilities, internal landscaping, and tree preservation. The minimum lot size in the community commercial zoning district is 10,000 square feet. Section 30-337B prohibits drainage and landscape yard buffers unless an administrative waiver is approved. The applicant received an administrative waiver to allow drainage as a low-impact development technique in the landscape yard buffers, with the caveat that the vegetation species be appropriate for the use of the buffer as a bioswale. A variance may be required if the landscape yard vegetation specified in section 30-335A cannot be planted in the buffers. Staff recommends approval of the variance with the condition that the 14-inch tree be preserved as illustrated on the plan. The variance is the minimum necessary to make possible the reasonable use of the land, and the request will preserve the spirit of the code and remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. The building will encroach 5 feet into a 20-foot landscape yard buffer adjacent to a local road. That concludes my presentation.
On page 208 of your packet, you'll see the drawing that was submitted by the applicant. And I believe it shows the tree in question. Actually, I lied. On page 216, it actually shows the tree in question. It's illustrated on there with a bubble in the middle. And it shows the tree that the applicant's trying to preserve. And you can see the location of the building 5 feet into that landscape buffer along Pineda. Page 216.
So that's the 14-inch or 14-foot oak, is that what you're talking about down at the bottom?
That is correct.
Okay, very nice. That bubble, all right. Yeah, I see it right here, this one. Okay, well, all right. Thank you, staff. Are there questions of staff on this matter?
Staff's belief that the double frontage is, because it's a corner lot, helps offset the reduction in the variance request, essentially.
Yes, I mean, if you, US 1 is an arterial, and according to our code, you're supposed to have a 30-foot landscape buffer. And then on Pineda, on every public right-of-way, you're supposed to have 20 feet. So it really does eat into this small piece of property. That's how we saw it.
Thanks.
All right. Are there other questions of staff? All right, seeing none, we'll open up the public discussion at this time. Do we have any cards, please?
Yes, Woody Rice.
Mr. Rice, please join us. And I inadvertently turned the button off, so you get to turn it on. Oh, it's back on. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, y'all. Woody Rice, 505 Indian River Avenue. And first, my client couldn't be here tonight. He called right before the meeting, and he was still tied up in a meeting himself. So he apologized for not being able to make it tonight. This variance is sort of unique in the fact that I can't remember the last time that you all had a variance to save a tree instead of taking a tree out. So that's a little different. What's special about this property? One, it is a side corner lot, has 2 road frontages, which has been pointed out. The building setbacks on Pineda is 15 foot. The building setbacks on US 1 is 25 feet. So legally, this building can be exactly where I placed it. It's the landscape code that prevents it from being put in it where it could be done. The landscape on Pineda is 20-foot. Buffer and a 30-foot buffer on US 1. So the landscape code is now dictating where buildings go instead of the others. So that's sort of, to me, sort of seems like a conflict in the code that maybe should be addressed at some time. The landscape buffer says that, we need a variance to get this. The site is only 0.51 acres, okay? It has 25 oaks on this site and 1 pine tree. We're trying to save, with including this 14-inch oak, 18 oaks, which is 72% of the oak trees on this site we can preserve. And my client directed me to try to save and lay out something that could save as many oaks as we possibly could. So it was sort of a nice way to move forward with trying to do the right thing with preservation of trees. The other thing that we did on this site, there's 20.9% of the site is being kept in its natural state. Now, let me verify that a little bit. If you went by the site, you'd see an awful lot of invasives and a lot of overgrowth on this site. So obviously, we're going to actually clean up the site around these oaks, make it actually where these oaks will now probably flourish from its current state. what are some of the benefits of what we're trying to accomplish? One, cosmetic. It's gonna have a good curb appeal. Two is the heat island effect that these canopies are going to help with, and reduce energy costs with the building that's gonna be there. So those are things. The other thing that's unique that we have done on this site that's not really in front of you all, but I think it's worthy pointing out, I believe this is one of the first LID, low impact development sites in Titusville. And it's been a little bit of a struggle for us because there is no LID code for the city of Titusville, but we've worked hard with staff over the last few months trying to come up with the ways that we can move forward with an LID with the absence of code. Some of the things that we're doing with LID, the treatment train, which is stormwater recovery, it has bioretention swells, and these swells actually are vegetated swells. So they're not just your typical swells. They have plants, they have things, and they actually take up nutrient loading for the stormwater that goes into them. We're using pervious pavement. This is another part of the treatment train, and then at the end, a dry retention pond is the final. So, those are why we're here tonight, trying to save another tree, and we just need your support, and we'd appreciate to have it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer it.
So the pine tree will leave?
I'm sorry?
The pine tree will leave?
Yes, the pine tree is gone, and one of the oaks I tried really hard to save because it was a fairly large oak, and I moved this building all over the site, and it just happens to be in the middle of the site, and you couldn't do it.
Okay, thank you. Are there further questions of this witness, please?
Just a comment, thank you for bringing us a very concise and intuitive plan.
Yeah, well, the second page actually I just sort of included, but it's the landscape plan. And I put little blue dots on all the trees that we're saving, okay, on there. And just so you know, when I looked at the site, it wasn't just that the tree was on our site, but if the root zone intruded into this site too, we tried to save it because we didn't want to impact the root zone of trees that were just off the site. So that's what the second one is, to show you that we do have a landscape plan and the number of trees that we are saving on this site.
Good job, Woody, on this one. Now, I like the way the treatment train is set up and the vegetation, and I think you did a super job. Just the main thing is you only need 5 feet to the west, that's it?
That's it. It's just trying to get this building out of the root zone area of that 14-inch oak to give
Still,
it
it's
a
very
really good
close
chance of
still.
survival.
And it's still close, so.
It is. If I could go further, I would, but,
Yeah.
I felt I tried to meet the existing building setbacks that were allowed by code, which was the 15 feet.
Are there further comments or questions of this applicant? Yes, I looked at that lot a long time ago, and it needed cleaning up, definitely. It'll help US 1, for sure, is my opinion. Is there any other cards, please?
No, sir.
And no other cards. So then we will close the public hearing at this time and bring it back to the commission for questions or comments. And I see none. May I have a motion, please?
Trying to get to it. Be there? No. Go ahead. Mhm.
Is this, I want to make sure I have the right section. Is this 30-334?
Are you talking about the variance itself?
Yes.
The requested variance, 30-332.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve variance 1-2021 to section 30-332 with the condition that the 14-inch oak tree is illustrated on the plan. Because that's going to be preserved, so it needs to be preserved.
He's preserving it.
Just to clarify, so the motion is to, as stated in our staff report, reduce?
Yes, to
Okay.
grant the 5-foot variance as stated in the approval, the suggested approval with the condition indicated by staff.
Okay, condition that the 14-inch oak tree be preserved as illustrated on the plan.
Yep, it's just a 5-foot variance, yes.
Thank you. Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, may we have roll call, please?
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Alternate Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahab?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rice. It was very concise. Okay, next up, oop, hit the wrong button. Didn't like that button. All right, next up we have, back up again. We're at variance number 2-2021. This concerns the property at 1103 John Glenn Boulevard. And staff, please enlighten us about this large project.
So this begins on page 226 of the agenda. The applicant, BRPH Architect Engineers Incorporated, is requesting a variance to section 30-182E1 to allow a security fence in the front yard setback, section 30-182E3 to allow a fence in the side corner yard setback, and section 30-182A4A to allow a variance to the landscape strip requirement for high security fences in the planned industrial development zoning district. The future land use is planned industrial park. The zoning is planned industrial development, and the surrounding zoning districts. The surrounding zoning districts are to the north, public (P), south, planned industrial development (PID), to the east, BU2 retail, warehousing, and wholesale commercial in the county, and to the west, State Road 407 and RU210 medium density multiple family residential in the county. The lot characteristics: the property meets the minimum width and area requirements of the PID zoning district. The property is mostly rectangular in shape with 781 feet of frontage along John Glenn Boulevard at the north boundary line, 309 feet of frontage along Grissom Parkway at the east boundary line, and 489 feet of frontage on State Road 407 at the west boundary line. The length of the south property line is 985 feet. There is an additional strip of land that fronts on White Drive, and the property is approximately 14.24 acres. Please note the setback dimensions of the property. Number 1, the front setback of 35 feet is measured from Grissom Parkway. Number 2, the side corner setback of 35 feet is measured from John Glenn Boulevard. Number 3, the rear setback of 25 feet is measured from State Road 407. And number 4, the interior side setback is measured from the south boundary line. In addition, there is a strip of land from this boundary that stretches to White Drive. The use: the property is vacant industrial. A site plan is currently under review to construct a warehouse and office building. The site plan proposes two buildings totaling 178,037 square feet with ancillary parking lot, truck distribution area, stormwater system, and security fence. And the uses are permitted in the PID zoning district. Once again, I have already went over the criteria used to review the variance, so I'll skip ahead to the analysis. The applicant submitted a site plan to construct a warehouse and office building at 1103 John Glenn Boulevard. The applicant is requesting variances to allow security fences to be located in the front and side corner setbacks and to eliminate the landscape strip requirement. The applicant is requesting the variances to comply with federal security requirements. Section 30-182 and 30-183 specify the city's security fence requirements. A security fence is defined as a fence with a height greater than 6 feet. The security fence is permitted in the rear and interior side setbacks but is prohibited in the front and side corner setbacks. Variances are required to approve a security fence in the front and side corner setbacks. A 10-foot wide landscape strip is required adjacent to a high-security fence. An administrative waiver is granted to waive the landscape strip requirement with the exception of fences facing on an arterial road, which is Grissom Parkway. A variance is required to eliminate the landscape strip along Grissom Parkway. Given that the fence will be highly visible along Grissom Parkway, the board may consider a condition that a decorative style security fence, such as a wrought iron, be erected in lieu of the proposed typical chain link fence. Staff recommends approval of the variance to allow the high security fence in the side corner setback along John Glenn Boulevard and front yard setback along Grissom Parkway. Staff also recommends approval of the variance to eliminate the high security fence landscape strip requirement along Grissom Parkway. Granting the variance will ensure the public safety and welfare. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance could deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the ordinance. The request can be supported due to federal security requirements. If the board requires a decorative fence as a condition of approval, provided it is not precluded by the federal security requirements, then the staff recommends that the applicant submit the fence to the board for approval.
The plan is in your packet on page 238. And you can see the unusual dimension of this property and all the different fronts and sides that we had a hard time trying to figure out what all applies here, but we came up with a determination on that. And you'll see on that drawing on page 238, John Glenn and Grissom Parkway, and that's those areas, those frontages are the subject of these variances. So Grissom is the front, and you can't put a security fence inside a front setback, so they need a variance for that. John Glenn Boulevard is a side corner, so you can't put a high security fence inside the setback there, so they need a variance for that as well. And then there is a landscape strip required along Grissom Parkway, because that is an arterial. That can only be approved as a variance. So those are the three variances they're requesting.
So staff, what I'm seeing is the entrance is actually coming off White Drive into this complex. I'm not seeing entrances over to John, or am I seeing an entrance to John Glenn or Grissom?
So it appears for the parking lot, the entrance will be off of White Drive, and for the truck distribution, it will come off of John Glenn Boulevard. The applicant is here. They can explain describe this property as well.
Great. Thank you.
What's the length of the frontage on Grissom?
It's in the staff report. I'll have to go back and go ahead.
She said that was along Grissom.
On Grissom, we estimate it to be 309 linear feet along Grissom Parkway.
Are there further questions of staff? Just that's a big building. All right. If there are no other questions of staff, then we'll open it up for a public hearing. And our first card, please.
Jason Lee Abbott.
Welcome, Mr. Abbott. If you would come up and please state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Jason Lee Abbott, 4935 North Highway US 1, Palm Shores, Florida, 32935. BRPH authorized representative for Lockheed Martin. So excellent review by staff. In overall summary for the property, I'm here tonight to address or answer any additional questions that you may have with the three variances. So we do have the three variances, two of them regarding the first one, 30-182E1, is regarding a security fence on Grissom. The second one is 30-182E3 with a security fence on John Glenn. And the third one is the removal of the landscape strip on 30-183A4A. So if anyone has any additional questions or concerns, I'm more than happy to address anything.
questions. There was a request about a decorative fence possibility along Grissom. Is
Yes.
that being addressed, or do you have some kind of suggestions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So typically for a high-security fence, your typical fence is 6-foot chain link fence with some form of barbed wires at the top. So what we're recommending is a nice decorative aluminum or iron wrought fence. What was provided will be our recommended basis of design. So at some point, we will go out for bid, and it would be very similar product to the one that we're proposing. And that basically has meets the UFC requirements to support the need of the DoD facility.
So the ones you do meet those requirements for your federal facility that you can not
Yes,
have
sir.
a problem with?
Yes, sir. The preference is the chain link fence, but to accommodate city staff and the team, we can provide something a little bit more decorative along Grissom.
Yes, okay.
Yes, sir.
Other questions of this applicant? Yes, sir.
Just, the fence, you want to, any one of those fences, that's what you would use, right?
Yes, sir. The design
Right.
intent that's shown on the exhibit. Yes, sir.
If I may, just to clarify what we stated in the staff report on page 228 of your packet, we stated if the board requires a decorative fence as a condition of approval. This is not something staff's recommending. We didn't include that as a recommendation of approval. So we're fine either way, whatever the applicant's proposing between you and the board, them and the board. But if you would like to see something that's decorative there in lieu of just a standard chain link fence there, that we would just ask that the applicant provide to you an illustration so that it'd be approved by you, instead of relying on staff to approve it. And so that's why we mentioned this, anticipated this and mentioned this to the applicant, and that's why they provided this to you tonight.
What I'm hearing, it's not a requirement, right?
I mean, there's nothing in the code that we could find to require it, but, I mean, we did have some staff members that thought it might be something that you might want to consider, because one of the purposes of having a 10-foot wide landscape strip along a high-security fence is to help screen it, because typically those high-security fences are very industrial looking along Grissom Parkway. So to help soften that look, they can remove the landscaping as one of the requests they're asking for in this variance. Why not put in something that might be more decorative? So we wanted to bring that out to you.
Who are the neighbors out here?
The neighbors?
To the
Various-
no-
go
yeah,
ahead.
so, directly across the street on John White, to the north, you've got the Titusville Police Department. To the northeast of us, to the northwest, you also have another Lockheed Martin facility. And to the south, you've got other warehouse, which is a similar adjacent uses. So all those items or all the neighbors I just listed are located all within the PID, which is the industrial planned industrial development area.
There's an aerial on page 234 of your packet that shows that as well.
I know, but I was looking, I couldn't couldn't identify it, so thank you for that.
Is it true that Lockheed Martin also has the property to the southwest, that building there on White Drive also?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, so that is already your, so.
Yes,
Just
sir.
about got it all. All right, that's good. Looks like a very large building. What's the height going to be on that, possibly? Just to be nosy.
I believe we're 50 to 55 feet clear.
Okay. Nice size, all right. Are there further questions of this applicant? No? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your time tonight.
All right. Do we have any other cards, please?
No, sir.
All right. No other cards at this time. We will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for questions of staff or a motion.
Just can we have it for, we have to make a motion for discussion, or?
No, we can
No?
discuss.
We
it,
can
yeah.
discuss it, yeah. Just Grissom Parkway is a really nice parkway that goes all the way down south, into Brevard County, and a decorative fence would be a very good thing to have instead of just a chain link fence, and especially reducing the buffer a little bit. So, this would be a good thing to have at the Grissom Parkway. The police station is right next door, right?
On the north side, yeah.
Yeah. That's a suggestion if we make a motion.
Those other properties there, are there fences out there?
I don't think there is,
I don't think there's a whole lot of fences out there.
no. But this one here mainly for security too, so,
I'm just thinking about aesthetics.
yeah.
That's the whole point of the decorative
Yeah.
fence. So I was just wondering what's already out there.
Right now it's vacant property, so there's no fences. If I'm correct. Is that right? There's basically no fences there now at all because it's vacant property except around your facility at the end of the road.
Yes, sir.
Apologize.
So I think I heard the question is our property is currently vacant and we don't have any fencing on it. I do believe there is a 7-foot chain link fence that surrounds the police station. I don't know if that runs up and down Grissom for sure. I know it does run east and west on John Glenn.
Yes. Yes, there is a fence there. And it's not really attractive either. This fence would be much nicer. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, I think this is a grand project for Titusville. So, and I can understand their need for security fences because I'm aware of what goes on out there. Would anybody else have a comment or motion?
I'm not compelled to require the fence. I'm fine with the fence. I'm not compelled to require a decorative fence. It would be nice, but I'm not. And I hope they consider it aesthetically speaking. But I'm not inspired to require it in light of the district.
Would the applicant have any problem with us requesting that? As the staff has recommended? Is that?
No, sir. I think our team is on board with providing the fence. As we agree, I think it would be an enhancement along Grissom.
Okay, that's good. As long as they agree, I have no problem with it personally. Any other discussion? Or
I was just
comment?
wondering, is that in lieu of the trees that they want removed? Or?
They will remove the trees whether it's a chain link or this. So if they remove the tree, whatever, yes?
But I just clarify, so there is a perimeter landscape buffer along Grissom, for example, but they're proposing, and that is measured right off from the property line into the property. And then there is the security fence that they want inside that setback. So I believe they want it right at the property line. So that's going to require a landscape strip. They want to eliminate that. So the remaining 10 feet of that landscape buffer, they'd still be required to put in landscaping per the buffer requirements there. And that's being reviewed right now during the site plan process. I don't know if Mr. Abbott wants to respond to that or have any comment on that. That's still being reviewed, that site plan.
Yes, and I think that we've also been sensitive to the existing canopy and vegetation on the site. And to answer your question, so we're still providing the landscape along the east side of Grissom, but really all we're doing is we're shifting it off the fence because the facility has a secured perimeter and it will has a guard shack, and it will be a manned perimeter that will be walked. So the real ask is, can we shift the landscaping off the fence so a guard can walk along the inside of the fence? So I brought an exhibit, and at the very last minute I actually colored it up so it kind of can show you what we were doing here. So this is along Grissom. So basically, you can see all the trees that we're planting along Grissom and John White, which exceeds code. And the real the request is we're pulling it off the fence so a security guard can walk the perimeter in pink. So we still have the decorative fence. We still have the landscaping that provides an additional buffer. It just gives us the security that we need for a guard to see on both sides of the fence.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you go, just one question. Can I see this again one more time?
You were pointing it that way. This side didn't
Yeah.
see it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, so your fence is inside the landscape buffer, or it's gonna be right at the property? Huh?
It's gotta be at the podium.
Oh, yeah.
Our fence is just inside the property line.
Inside, just inside the
It's
property?
inside the property line, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Not 15 feet in?
Correct.
Okay, that's it. That's all I need. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, are there further questions? Okay. What page do I go to again? Somebody help me out.
Page 228 has the recommendation.
228, yeah, that's the recommendations, yes. So it's just one variance number, we don't have to have multiple votes?
There are 3 variances specifically that's being asked for.
Go to 226.
Yeah, beginning of 226.
226.
Paragraph, that A paragraph under background.
Ah, there's,
So there are 3 sections of the code that are specifically being requested.
okay, yeah. There we go. Okay, so we do have to vote on each one individually, is that correct? Yes, all right, you're right. So the first one we're coming up with is section 30-182, 182, excuse me, E1, to allow security fence in the front yard setback. Is there discussion or a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve variance 2-2021 to section 30-182 subsection E subsection 1 to allow the security fence in the front yard setback.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Good. Is there any other further discussion? Seeing none, may we have a roll call, please?
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
alternate member Van Deven,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahayam,
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez.
Yes.
Very good. So now we'll go to section 30-182E3 to allow fence at the side corner yard setback.
I will make a motion to approve variance 2-2021 to section 30-182 subsection E subsection 3 to allow a fence in the side corner yard setback.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Multiples, great. May we have roll call, please?
Vice Chairman Shahayam,
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
alternate member Van Deven,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor.
Yes. Very good. And the last one here is section 30-182A4A to allow a variance to the landscaping strip requirement for a high-security fence in the planned industrial zone. And possibly with an amendment for the fence.
This one is specifically to the landscape strip along Grissom.
Correct. Don't have it, all right. He's not there, he doesn't have it on his, the numbers. Yeah, 120, 226. Yeah. Under A.
I'd like to make a motion for variance 2-2021-1103 For section 30-183A4A, with conditions related to the decorative fencing requirements that we've discussed.
Point of clarification, I think it's section 30.182A4A.
All right, I'm looking at their request, it's 183. So
That's 20,
let's go back down.
Page 226, line 10.
Thank you. Correcting to 182, A4E, with conditions as discussed.
but it is an A. It is an A. Here.
Was that not what I just said?
No, you said E at the end.
Okay. Correcting to A4E. That's what I keep seeing. Let me look at this.
Mine has a A there, not an E.
Like I said, I didn't have the numbers.
Our computer's great.
They are when they work. Can someone give me a page number?
126.
226, line
226.
I'm almost there.
Line number 10.
Section 30-182A4A
That's correct.
for approval
With the decorative fence, right?
with the decorative fence as
On
discussed.
Grissom.
On Grissom.
All right.
Thank you.
Before there's a second, I'm sorry, you wanted to say?
Go ahead.
Before there's a second, I just want to make sure that clarify your motion. So with a decorative fence, any particular fence or just at the choice of the applicant based
Choice
on
of
what
the
they provided to us?
Decorative
Okay,
as proposed.
okay, because there's several versions in here, and we want to make sure that maybe the condition could just be general and up to the applicant to choose what he submitted here,
Correct.
as opposed to any particular fence that's illustrated here.
For my intent, any
One-
one of these meets the criteria.
One clarification, just in case, because sometimes you don't want to stick to the exactly the same manufacturers, same people. You'd say, or approved equal. That's basically what I'd like to.
To staff, is this going to be part of your records?
Yes.
Okay, so then my suggestion is, because it's going to go out for bid and there's going to be a variety of options, as long as it is in similar nature to this that has been provided, which will be part of the record, then that would be my amended suggestion to your motion.
Is that
As
agree
amended,
with you?
yes.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so I had a motion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
And any further discussion? Not seeing none. May we have roll call, please?
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
alternate member Van Deven,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahab,
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez.
Yes.
All right, you're, got the green light from us, sir. And we welcome the growth to Titusville. Thank you. All right, next is petitions and requests from the public present. And do we have anyone that wishes to come forward? I don't think we had enough cards on that, do we, or just?
Tony Schifolo,
Have a good evening, gentlemen.
So the camera picks it better on that side. This way. Yeah, hold it up like that so they can see.
Laura Lee Thompson, 3550 Irwin Avenue, Mims, Florida. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I did want to talk about the causeway, the Titusville Causeway, and what I think might happen with this Parks project that's now been moved to the City Council. But I still want to take this opportunity to talk about it and get this on camera. This picture was taken on September the 23rd, 2020, like 4 or 5 months ago. And you'll see these 2 yellow arrows right here. Those are 2 posts that were exposed when the causeway eroded. The causeway used to go way out here. Those posts were buried 2 years ago. You couldn't see them because the causeway was out to here. And that's when they started planning the park project and making their calculations. Okay, next. This picture was taken on December the 5th, 2020. This is the same 2 posts. It shows you the wide variation in water levels that occur along the Titusville Causeway. So if you were doing calculations and you were looking for a water, a water line, you might think that that's the water line. This picture was taken on November the 11th, 2020, at the height of the king tides. The water comes up higher in the river every year. Every year it gets higher. That's the east end of the causeway. It was completely covered by the river. So where is the water line in this picture? Is it here? Where those posts were? Is it here? Where, when in December? Or is it here? So my problem with that project is that it doesn't have any provisions for protecting what little bit remains of the beach along the causeway. So we are the #1 destination for wind sports. You can see the kite boarders in this picture. They're almost on the causeway. But when the wind blows from certain directions, people come from all over the state to recreate on our causeway. It's the #1 spot for wind sports on the east coast of Florida. And you know about the horseshoe crabs. We've talked about the horseshoe crabs, and Tony will probably talk about the horseshoe crabs. The design of that project includes a 3-foot concrete barrier that's going in at what was 20 feet from the water line, but now is not 20 feet from the water line. It's real close to the water line. And what will happen is when we get big storm waves, they're going to pound against that barrier, and it could even undermine the project the same way that it did the walkways underneath the east end of the, well, actually both sides of the bridge, underneath the bridge during Hurricane Irma. All of those walkways and parking lots were undermined from the waves, and they caved in. So my concern about this project is that if we don't think about how we're going to keep that beach in place so that you don't end up with waves pounding against this barrier that really is going to act like a seawall, then it could jeopardize. The project is now up to $3.5 million. So you're putting at risk a project that we're spending millions of dollars on by not thinking about how we're going to protect the beach at the same time. And that's my comment. Thank you. You're next. You guys will stay up here. I gotta get my speech. Oh, get your speech.
Tony Schiffolo, 715 Tropic Street, Titusville. I don't know why I had to get my speech. I'm not going to give the same one. Things changed unexpectedly. I was going to say that 2 months ago, the applicant, Brevard Parks and Recreation, you told them to bring back a new plan that addressed many of the issues that were, excuse me, that were raised by their original plan. One being, the 3-foot seawall, another being the sidewalk, unnecessary. And the thing I really wanted to talk about was the gratuitous street lights to make safe. I believe they said in their presentation that they withdrew, to make the park safe for nighttime activities. Well, the way I see it over there at Parish Park, the nighttime activities are stargazing, or maybe watching the sunset, or there for a nighttime launch or maybe some night fishing, and none of those activities require light pollution. So I was going to speak about that. But really now I guess what I want to say is I'm really pleased that I did come to the meeting tonight to hear the way that applicants, especially Woody Rice with the LID and the wanting to save trees. I'm a member of the Titusville tree team, and you don't know how happy I was to hear him say, you know, I want to have 5-foot variations so that I can save these trees. And I do believe all the different boards, let me address this issue just a little bit because I'm not really sure what I'm getting into here, but the reason this application was pulled is because it's going to go to city council without going through you anymore. And I'm a member of one of the 4 or 5 citizen advisory boards to the city council. And I would be really upset if my board had some of our, maybe it's a privilege to get to make policy. It's a privilege to represent the citizens that surround you, that you live with. I'd be upset if some of my responsibilities were taken away, and that's all I want to say about that. But I really want to say thank you for your attention to the tree canopy in Titusville. Thank you.
Do we have any other cards, please?
No, sir.
And it,
Hi there. My name is Kevin Rosa. I live at 1500 Hardy Street, Titusville. I just wanted to read this. It's about 2 or 3 minutes, if I can make it through this without stumbling too bad. Okay. The waters on either side of Maxborough Causeway are the widest, shallowest, most protected body of water on the entire east coast of Florida. It's a prime windsurfing, I'm a windsurfer, kite surfer, and sailor. It's a prime windsurfing, kite surfing, beach, catamaran, day sailor, and kayak location. I represent the non-motorized eco-enthusiast. Their overwhelming demographic is a group whose income is in the 6-figure category. This demographic has means and homes. If you build a park with pavilions and running water, you will attract a demographic without means and without homes. Our demographic doesn't come here for shelter from the rain or the sun or to take a bath. They come here for the unobstructed space and the grass to rig their sails and kites on. Now you've taken away 95% of the grass by installing a paved bike path. A huge percentage of this community already refuses to come here. If you put in a seawall, pave the park, and put up vertical obstructions such as palm trees, signs, metal poles, there will be no kiters because it will be impossible to kite here. The remainder of the group will not rig their equipment on pavement. If you don't give back the grass that you took away, they will not return. Mr. Bill Klein's a friend of mine. He's a volunteer advisor to the Parks Department. For many years, he lived on waterfront property on Tampa Bay. In no time, the prevailing wind and waves built up sand and grass 3 feet higher than it was when he originally moved there. Just like the sea oats trap sand on the dunes on the Atlantic coast. Same thing happens here at Parish Park. I've got a video, I'm not going to show it now, of what happens here at Parish. North prevailing winds, right where Laura Lee's pictures were, build up sand on the grass grows through the sand, and the process repeats itself. The causeway can rebuild itself. The solution would be to keep vehicular traffic off the edge of the water in some sort of guardrail or row of boulders, as the vehicular traffic at the edge of the water is the cause of the erosion problem we have today. What's ironic is the fact that we have the technology to bring dirt back from Mars, but we can't fix the problem with the erosion of Parish Park without paving it over. Thank you.
additional card?
No, sir.
Okay. No more cards. All right. In that case, we'll close the public hearing at this time, and I believe we're up for reports, and we have a semi-annual report to staff. I believe you're submitting to City Council, is that correct?
Correct. The last page of your agenda has that report. It just summarizes your actions for the past 6 months. We give it to you to show it to you before we give it to City Council, because it is an opportunity for you to communicate with the City Council.
It just shows we didn't do a lot. A lot of meetings we didn't have, so. Yes?
Is this time for just discussion?
Okay, we're through with the report. Is there anybody see anything different we need for submitting to the City Council? Okay, thank you. We approve it then. Okay, so we'll open it up first. We'll ask staff, do you have anything to report to us first?
We do not have any more applications for the March meeting so far.
Okay.
That's all we can tell you right now.
Very good.
Yeah.
Counselor, have anything? Yes, sir. All right. We'll bring it up to the membership. Discussion.
I was just wondering, is there a reason why the Board of Adjustments and Appeals members were not included in the proposed ordinance that completely strips a requirement of what we do?
We didn't see the need because of the fact that City Council asked staff to draft that ordinance. And so we drafted that and went ahead and provided that to City Council based on their direction. As an advisory board, the changes to the land development regulations are typically by code are required to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission to provide recommendation to City Council, but there's nothing in the code that specifically asked us or required us to bring it before the Board of Adjustment for a recommendation. That's not to say that you certainly have every ability to do that. You have every right to make a recommendation to City Council at any.
So this ordinance was adopted and approved yesterday,
It was adopted and approved at a public hearing at City Council meeting yesterday.
as presented in this document here?
Yes, what I gave you was the red line version that we presented to City Council, and that was the version that was adopted.
So the notice requirements now for whatever the City Council somehow deems to be public interest pursuant to this language, is that notice requirement for the hearing different than what the notice requirement is for the BAA hearings?
No, ma'am. That notice requirement requires, so we have two notice requirements in the BA for standard variances, and that is we send notices to the property owners within 100 feet of the property, and we do post a sign. So this is the same.
So, Mike, not that it matters, I just like to say it. With the age of technology and social media, it would be nice that rather than simply posting at a location and then the 100 feet within the location, such as Parish Park, where 100 feet of it gives notice to very little residents of the entire city that uses that area, it would be nice to have the city post on their website or on their Facebook page to actually allow the public to hear it, especially if it's going to be deemed for the public purpose. I would encourage a notice requirement well beyond what is standard for these proceedings, because it's going to go to the greater public. That is a main concern. I've had that concern from day one, that we only limit so many people that get notice of it. But if it's going to be in there, that's just my concern. That's my 2 cents.
Just to respond, this notice requirement for notices sent to surrounding property owners was only recently added in the code just for even variances that brought before you just a few years ago. Before that, there was never a letter sent out. But we decided to ask council to include that requirement only a few years ago. And that's even less than what we typically require for rezonings. Right now, it's 500 feet for a rezoning or a conditional use permit.
It doesn't encourage meaningful hearings and transparency.
Okay.
And the fact that there was something transpired that caused city council to want to have an ordinance drafted to this extent, and we did not have the opportunity to have meaningful discussion regarding a possible transition, appears to be less transparent than what could have been. And so in a situation like this where city council will now be handling this, which is fine, it would be nice to offer as much information to the public as is possible. And considering that someone's got to schlep out there and hammer down a sign versus click and post onto a social media site that will get spread throughout the city for actual meaningful input, I think it's just something that the city should consider as far as notice requirements. That's my 2 cents. Nothing further.
I will just add to that, I did attend the meeting last night. If you care to look at the video, I did speak, and I spoke as my individual, not as a representative of this board, expressing my, I found out on it the day before, on Monday, that this item actually happened, because I didn't ever see the legal, well, I wouldn't have understood the legal in the tiny print in the back of the newspaper, which I still take the newspaper, but I could not understand what it said. I did express my displeasure of not allowing this board to be notified. I know that we did not have a meeting in January, so there was no, it all happened in between our 2 meetings. One of the staff members did apologize and say that she slipped up and it just did not get out and was not notified. So I didn't speak in for or against, but I just gave a reference that it would have been nice if we had known that this was happening. It was my request that y'all got the email on Monday that this was on the agenda for Tuesday night. So, but otherwise, that's what I said, and I think they listened or they heard. So hopefully in the future, things like this won't happen. But I like your idea of, but since now, especially in the past, before the ADA requirements, we had our agendas available on the city website. We don't have that now. It's not there. So on this particular item, they had to email me out with that, what was going to be on, because the little capsule review that's on the website, I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand that stuff. So I think we could do a better job, and if you would relay that to your supervisors and then to the city council, that we could do a better job of letting everyone know what is going on diplomatically.
I do have one, on that note, I do have one report. This coming Saturday, the 27th at 9 a.m. is the city's annual community conversation, where if you have issues related to anything going on within the city, that would be an opportunity to bring them up for council to take into consideration for the upcoming budget year.
I just want to make one comment. I think as public servants, no matter if it's city council, board of adjustment and appeal, just as public servants, that we have to strive to not come across as inappropriate or favoritism. And with keeping that in mind, I just feel uncomfortable about the way things were done. And I would hate to see or, make a judgment that that's what happened, but just even given the appearance of it, it's not a good thing.
Any other comments? I have no other reports or anything, so if we have nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. I didn't have it. We will adjourn the meeting. I turned on my speaker. Okay.